Thank you, parents, for joining us this evening. We're really pleased to have you. We wanted to get together with you as our fully remote parents and offer an opportunity for a Q&A, provide some insights into the second semester, some adjustments we've made throughout first semester, and really just engage you in some conversation. So the format of this evening's event, we will start with introductions and then just some quick updates from the district to provide some context to our conversation. Some members of our registered participants provided questions in advance, so we'll address a few of those. Then we'll jump over to the Q&A or anyone who might have their hand raised. And Tony will then call on you. We'll kind of open up the floor to more of a town hall kind of setting, especially about any of the information that we present first. And then we'll just kind of go back and forth between the questions that were submitted and those that might be live. Hopefully we'll get to everyone's questions and comments. And again, we really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. So in terms of introductions, I am Carrie Kermascoli. I'm the superintendent here for the Wilmette Public Schools. And on my screen to my right, I have Katie Lee. I'll ask everyone to introduce themselves. Katie and then Kristen, Cindy, Kate, and Kelly.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Katie Lee. I'm the administrator for curriculum and instruction.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Swanson. I'm the administrator for student services. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Cindy Anderson. I'm the principal at Ramona Elementary School and looking forward to this evening.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kate Dominique and I'm the principal at Wilmette Junior High School.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Jackson. I'm the principal at Highcrest and the administrator for 5-8 education.
Thank you, everyone. So these are really busy days for us, as we know it is for our parent community and for our students as well. So many thanks to our administrators who took the time to join us this evening. I know there are some who are working behind the scenes as well. And Tony, thank you for moderating for us this evening. We will start with a quick update on our fully remote program. Looking forward to second semester. And Katie Lee will start us off with that. Thank you, Katie.
Yes. We're just going to begin with a little bit of background information. If I could advance, here we go. Some general information. As you know, I believe that most of our audience are families who have been in the enhanced remote program. However, I know that we also have families who have chosen for enhanced remote for second semester. Within the first semester, we conducted an enhanced remote learning program review, and based on a lot of feedback from families and teachers, we did make some adjustments and recommendations that we would like to highlight for you tonight. Second semester, just so you know, as a reminder, begins on Monday, January 25th. And yes, we have definitely thought of and have planned for how to support students who are transitioning from one learning model to another. So I'm going to turn this over to Cindy Anderson so that she could review the elementary information.
Sure. Thanks, Katie. So we do have some students moving from in-person to remote learning on Monday, but we also have many students moving from remote to in-person. So there will be smaller class sizes for many of our remote classes at the elementary level. And for those that are new students to the remote program, our teachers are reaching out to them, trying to make it as smooth of a transition. And they're doing lots of activities to connect the students to the class and make that transition smooth. We did a survey and a targeted evaluation to improve our remote program. We did make the adjustments to really make sure that our teachers were doing 2.5 hours of synchronous learning each day, and the other 2.5 is asynchronous. Now, on any daily basis, there might be a little variety to that schedule, but the teachers are working to make those adjustments to work towards that for all students. We are also working to allow for more small group instruction. That allows for more individualized instruction, some more socialization, and more differentiation, all of which we think are important. And we found people were requesting in the surveys, so our teachers are working on getting more small group instruction into their schedules. And that time for socialization was a call that a lot of people asked for, and our teachers are being creative in how to incorporate that into their school day. Another thing that families asked for was specific communication for remote learners in our weekly emails, and we're all working to include that when there's applicable information. So you may have noticed that tonight's webinar was posted in all of our newsletters, and we'll try to have specific information for remote families whenever appropriate. And the last thing on here, we have the class sizes. So the averages for those class sizes are between 13 and 20, and you can see there's a range at every grade level, but the class sizes are smaller due to students moving into the in-person program.
All right, and I will review the 5th through 8th grade. So the program is remote learning at Highcrest and Wilmette Junior High is very similar at both schools, where we have a remote learning team that is specific to all of our remote learners, and students still receive all of their creative arts, world language, and PE instruction. Again, some of the things on here are repeat information from what Cindy went over, but our new students are starting on Monday. And our GLADs and teachers are reaching out to support new students into that transition. So our GLADs are grade level administrators. They're working with kids, just reaching out, letting them know what to expect, and vice versa for our current remote learners that are moving into the in-person model. Again, we also gave a survey, and some of the things that came out of the survey are important things that we are working on to improve. So while we know our minimum is 2.5 hours of synchronous learning each day, a lot of our feedback came in the form of offering some more breaks and coupling synchronous instruction with asynchronous instruction. And so that's a work in progress that we continue to talk with our teachers about, identify times when they can plan that into their day. We do use it flexibly so that teachers are able to adapt from day to day based on their instructional needs. And they are also utilizing small groups and breakouts during these periods to allow for some differentiation and more targeted instruction as well. Another item that came out of those surveys was just more times for community building and socialization, ways for kids to connect. And so there were some things that that teachers are doing specifically with their homerooms, but also mixing up their homerooms on a team, offering opportunities for kids to talk during lunch, those sorts of things. But on a larger scale, we are working as a building on identifying some lunch bunches and different targeted interest things for kids to do during their lunch hour, because our remote kids and our in-person kids have the same time for their lunch. So this will give opportunities for them to connect even across the instructional models, maybe see some friends that might be in the other instructional model, and just connect in a different way in an interest-based fashion. So there's actually information, I think, coming out next week, at least at Highcrest. I know the junior high is doing some similar lunch bunches that are more socially based for kids to talk and just connect. There's specific communication for remote families in our weekly principal emails as well, and really try to highlight things that are important to you so that you know right where to look for the information you need to help support your student. And again, we had fewer students moving into the remote learning program than moving into the in-person program. So our class sizes have reduced a little bit at 5th through 8th grade. At 5th grade, you'll see the average is 24. 6th grade, the average is 22. 7th grade, the average is 23. And 8th grade is the average is 28. Those are homeroom classes. And so content area classes might change a little bit depending on, like, for example, math. Some students may attend an accelerated math class while other kids are in a gen ed math class. So.
Right. And for our students with IEPs, with disabilities, our students are still receiving the services that are on their IEPs. That's provided by LBSs that are remote only LBSs. So that's their whole caseload, our children who are working remotely this year. Those services are provided both synchronously and asynchronously, and they work with the student, the family, and the IEP team to make sure that we're really meeting the unique needs of our learners who have IEPs or who may struggle with certain parts of learning. One of the questions that we've heard a lot of is, if I have a question, if I have a concern, who should I go to? Because, my teacher may be not from my child's home school, the LBS may be not from their home school, but you would still start with your child's classroom teacher and LBS. Those are the people that are best able to answer questions and help shape the programming for your student. If you have additional questions, you can always go to the student services coordinators. There's Tanya Martin, who can help support any of our students in the K-4 level, and Amy Fries at the 5-8. Then your child's building administrator. And then if you're still struggling, you can always come to me, Kristen Swanson, or Angela DeMay, the assistant director.
I would echo the same as far as the go-tos, the classroom teacher, school-specific administrators, district administrators. We also do have a family toolbox that is always updated. You can find it directly on our homepage where the circle is, where it says back to school. The link will take you to what you see on the far right, which is the Google site. So there's a lot of information, including for new families to enhanced remote learning. There's some great videos that would help you with some of the platforms that our students engage in, as well as some parent events that we offer all of our families to engage in. So if there's any questions about that, you can also feel free to contact me specifically. Okay.
Team, thank you so much for that quick update. Our focus tonight really is on engaging in the questions and feedback that our parents can provide to us. Hopefully we'll be able to answer most of those that were submitted in advance. And right now I see one question in the Q&A. Tony, just to make sure that those who are joining us this evening know how to ask a question, should they raise their hand, place it in Q&A? What is your preference?
Yeah, so there's two ways that you can do it live. We already, as previously stated, have the questions that were pre-submitted, and we'll first start with some of those. But we'll take a break from that after about 5 questions and then go to anyone that has a live question. And the two ways that you can do that are by clicking on the Q&A icon and typing your question in there, or we do enjoy seeing people. So there's a raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. When the time comes, we'll ask for anyone that has a question to raise their hand, at which I will call your name and move you over into the meeting to where we can see and hear you, and you can ask your questions. So 2 ways live, and then we have the pre-submitted questions, which we'll start with.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. So let's get started with the questions.
All right. So I am going to, with our panelists here, call on people that we think are best suited to answer the question, and then any of our other panelists may join in answering that. So our first question is about art and handwriting, and in 3rd grade in particular. Cindy Anderson, if you can talk to art and handwriting, when do those start specifically for 3rd grade, or is there a time of year in which that does start?
Sure. So this year, art and music were each done for 1 semester. So if your child had music for the first semester, that finishes this Friday on the 22nd, and then art will begin on Monday the 25th. So the timing is soon that they would switch to the other special. And if your child had art during the first semester, they would switch to music next term. So they will get to experience both, but just for 1 semester each. And handwriting is a part of our curriculum, and different teachers teach it at different times throughout the year as it fits in. So I would recommend reaching out to your homeroom teacher to find out their plan for when that will begin if it hasn't started already.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Katie Lee, the next question's for you. How are we ensuring the full curriculum is covered given the recent reduction in synchronous learning?
Yeah, so thank you. Prior to this year, our teachers do meet and collaborate district-wide as well as in their teams by grade level in the school. More than ever, last spring really taught us that those articulations were important and valued, and we needed to continue. And so what we have is that structure in place. So when our teachers meet as a district team, so for example, all third grade meeting together for an hour to have that articulation, they discuss pacing and they discuss the units of study, and they may find that they are sharing that they're 1 or 2 lessons off of one another. However, those discussions are important to keep aligned and also to provide equity in the kind of the breadth of curriculum that is being offered to all of our students in person and remote. So we continue to do that. The teachers meet in that format 5 times a year. But in addition to that, our teams at the schools are so collaborative. They support one another in lesson planning. They talk to one another almost on a daily basis, just to, reach out and check in all of the content areas. And so all of those conversations, on top of that, we have our administrators, we have my team of coordinators, we check in with the teachers all the time. We know that this is important. We know that, what we are able to teach our students this year and for the whole year should be the same for remote as well as in person. And so that's why we value these articulations very much.
Great, thank you, Katie. You're also, the next question I think is most appropriate for you. Will there be more asynchronous activities or classes for students to participate in? And then there was a comment from the parents that they would appreciate more activities and less screen time.
Yes, you are echoing a lot of the feedback that we received when we had the remote learning program review. It was really mixed. Actually, some families said that they would love more synchronous time, and others felt that there was way too much. When we surveyed our staff, we realized there was some teachers were spending so much more above and beyond the 2.5 hours of synchronous time, and then some were slightly below. So we kind of equalize that, as you can see, trying to provide that consistency. So that was part of our conversation. I think the best way to address the more asynchronous time would be to have a conversation with the classroom teacher. When sometimes our teachers like to just kind of be on live with the students as they're working independently. That could be the time that your child could, log out or disengage from the camera for a little bit so that they could just work independently on the assignment that is given. But we are trying to strike a balance, and we've been working on that since the fall.
Great, thank you,
Sure.
Katie. Carrie, the next question's for you, and then we'll switch and take some live questions. This question is, if or when teachers are vaccinated, will in-person school reconvene, if even for the last month, or will space be an issue?
So that's a great question. And in fact, we are getting a lot of updated information and guidance from the health department right now. We are all very eager to hear more about the rollout of vaccinations to the 1B group, which includes essential workers, teachers and staff, all of those individuals who are important to our school operations. And so we are eager for that. It does seem as though coming up here in February, we are more likely than ever to receive vaccinations. Before, we were thinking it probably wouldn't happen until April. And so we're really excited about this new news, and we are eagerly anticipating additional information. That said, we've heard from our health department time and time again that vaccines are incredibly important. They scientifically have been found to reduce the likelihood of developing symptoms and becoming ill. So it is really an important thing for us all to consider when we have the opportunity to access vaccines. However, they are still studying how the virus is transmitting among those who have been vaccinated. So they sound very hopeful that it will reduce the likelihood of transmission, but they are awaiting additional study on that matter. And so at this point, what we are being told is we should expect to continue all of the mitigation procedures that are in place at this time. We know that that includes wearing our masks and maintaining good hygiene, cleaning our spaces, and most significantly within our schools, maintaining 6 feet of distance between students and among our adults. And so with that in mind, at this time, we really don't anticipate being able to bring additional students into the school until that 6 feet of distancing guidance is adjusted. We are fully prepared to make adjustments as soon as that adjustment would come from the health department. But the vaccine alone is likely not to cause that adjustment. I think it will be a pairing of a multitude of things that would come together to lead the health department to advise schools to allow reduced distancing. We would all love to get that guidance. I know, speaking on behalf of our teachers and also our students who we hear from a lot, we would love to have all of our students on campus every day for full days of instruction. Right now, keeping our priority of health and safety, we really do need to adhere to that 6 feet of distancing. So we're not expecting it even once teachers get vaccinated, but hopefully, as things evolve, we will be able to do that.
Great, thank you, Carrie. Now what we'll do is if we have any brave souls that are on tonight's town hall that would like to come on camera, please raise your hand. Again, it's at the bottom of your screen. And what I'll do is move you over with our panelists where you can turn on your video and unmute yourself and ask your question. Because that is a way of asking a question that's live, we do ask that you please don't mention any identifying information of your child. This is being recorded and we are going to post it for a later viewing. So just waiting here a moment. If there's anyone that wants to ask a question live, raise your hand. And I don't see anyone. So the other way for you to ask a question is to put it into the Q&A. So that's where I will go next. And I think we answered the first one. The second one we somewhat answered. First one was about more asynchronous learning. I think we talked about that. Second one, I also think we answered, just looking for all students if they're going to be in person before the end of the year. This third one, though, is a question probably Carrie, I'm thinking you're the best person to answer this. Can remote learners participate in the COVID testing that is offered to in-person learners?
Thank you for asking that question. So right now the district is offering 2 different types of COVID testing. The first is the PCR testing. That's our diagnostic assessment. That would be for an individual who is symptomatic or has known exposure to someone who's been diagnosed with COVID. That testing, it's called Ambry testing. That testing is available from our school nursing office, and it is available both to our in-person learners as well as to our remote learners. So please, if you are in need of a diagnostic assessment, if you're experiencing symptoms, if you think you might have been exposed, reach out to your homeschool nurse and they will make sure that you have access to that test. It takes about 36 hours, sometimes 48 hours at most to receive those results, but it is really the gold standard in diagnosing COVID-19. So we're happy to make that available to all of our students as well as our staff members. The other testing that we're doing right now is called safeguard screening. And this is not diagnostic. It really is screening those who are coming into our building for COVID-19. And so at this point, because it is just a screening tool, we are limiting that to those who are entering our building. So our in-person learners as well as our in-person teachers have access to participate in that. For us, it's an important mitigation layer in addition to distancing and wearing masks and checking symptoms before you come to school. This is yet one more way for us to check and screen for COVID-19, hopefully reduce the need to close in-person school and reduce the need for quarantine, as well as the risk of exposure coming into the school building. And so right now we are limiting that just to our in-person learners and our in-person staff.
Great, thank you. The next Q&A question is about second semester commitments. So whoever would like to take this one, although the parents said this question is specific for the junior high, I think it could could be broadened to any of our schools. If the rollout for eligibility, as you just spoke about, for teachers to receive the vaccine sooner than later happens, might it be an option for students to return to school before the end of the year, even if only for a month? In other words, might remote students be able to have the option to safely return to school once all teachers are vaccinated?
So I'll give us a start here, and then I'll let the principals jump in. Again, right now we're not anticipating a reduction in the spacing needs of our in-person programming. So we don't anticipate that happening before the end of the school year. If it were to happen, if the health department came out and recommended that we could offer schooling with, say, 4 feet of distancing or 3 feet of distancing, we definitely would be looking at increasing our in-person time and considering what options might be available for our remote learners. One thing to keep in mind, the connections that we've created and that most importantly, teachers and students have created within their classroom are really, really important to us. And so we do want to maintain those connections. So unless the whole class was planning to move to in-person learning, it might be more disruptive for that last month of school than it would be helpful, especially when we're thinking about academic learning and growth. And so those are some things that we would really think carefully about before making that jump. We know that even with vaccines, we will still have families who are very committed to the fully remote learning program. And so we'll need to consider all of that if it were to come to be that we had the opportunity to bring more students in. I hope that answers the question, but I know there's some unique elements at each of our elementary, middle school, and junior high school. And so I'll let any of the principals jump in if you have additional information you might be able to share.
I think just to reiterate what you're saying, Carrie, which is, I think sometimes maybe we didn't talk as openly about it as we could have, but I know at the junior high school, we're strapped for space. So if you read my newsletter, you'll see that we have about 5 teachers that teach out of the cafeteria because that's a space where we've been able to kind of move some classrooms. And for us, as Dr. Cremascoli mentioned, we would need the guidelines to change for us to be able to bring all of our students back in person.
Yeah, the same stands true for the elementary buildings as well. But I can tell you that we're all dreaming and hoping that that day is soon. So we're all very hopeful that we return to that sooner than later.
I will continue to emphasize that if any person, a parent, has a specific concern regarding what's happening in the fully remote program, or maybe there's been some unique circumstances that have changed for your family, I would invite you to reach out first to your teacher. That's always a great first contact, and then to your principal or assistant principal to discuss the concerns and what options might exist. We understand that there are sometimes very unique situations, and we experience those throughout first semester. And while we hope they don't occur second semester, we do understand that there are many things changing in our lives. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out and discuss what options might exist if you have a concern.
Great, thank you. I know that question was already answered previously, but I've seen it now a couple of times, which tells me it's on the minds of many of our families as they may have chosen the remote option for health reasons. So we'll ask one more question from the Q&A, and then we'll go back to our pre-submitted questions. So the next question is maybe best for Katie and any of our principals, but we'll first start with Katie. Has there been any evaluation to see if the remote kids are keeping up with the kids compared to in person in terms of educational gains?
Yes, actually, that is definitely on our minds as well. So we rely on our MAP assessments. So I know that only really covers from 2nd grade through 8th grade. But even in the fall administration, we did review and looked for any discrepancies, any significant discrepancies among our students. And there was none. So what I think our next opportunity would be with our benchmarking assessments that are happening this winter. So the winter administration for MAP will occur, and we will be able to dig into that data to see if there's any trends and patterns and be able to assess that. Another way that we could determine is to look at the report cards that will be coming out soon. So we have some standards-based measures that we could also tap into, because our system allows us to gather that information and look for patterns and trends, not specifically on one student, but really a group of them. And so that would allow us to see if there's any discrepancies. So we agree with you. That is on our minds as well. And it's something that we will monitor so that we can make improvements in our learning programs.
Katie, just to add on to that a little bit as well, I just wanted to mention, and you mentioned before that our teams really plan together, including our remote teaching teams. They join in, for example, at 6th grade, all of our ELA teachers are planning together and working on similar standards at the same time. And they talk about student data with assessments and what have you as a group. And so if there were significant trends, that would certainly be hopefully modified and rectified in time, but we really haven't seen that as a result. So they are pretty much on pace with their friends in school. So
great, thank you. I'm going to go back to the pre-submitted ones. We'll do another grouping of those, then come back to see if we have any live questions. So in going back to the pre-submitted, we have a question about 8th graders. So assuming that we have some 8th grade parents on the call tonight, I'm going to broaden their question a little bit. It was a little more narrow, but I think their question is about the transition process for 8th graders to New Trier. What does that look like for an 8th grade student? And that could be anything from maybe just asking former students to whatever. How does that transition process look like for kids that are remote?
So I'm glad that this question was asked, because as a new principal my first year at Wilmette Junior High, it gave me the opportunity to look into this a little bit. So we're actually meeting, our next PTO meeting in February is based on articulation of not only our 8th graders to New Trier, but also our 5th graders, 6th graders coming up to WJHS. And so we are going to talk about 8th grade end of year activities and transitions. It came to my knowledge, and Kelly Jackson can jump in, that we haven't done a student panel before, but we usually do a parent panel. And so I have emailed our PTO president to ask if we can add that to the agenda. But I like the idea of a student panel. And so when I meet with the PTO in February, I'm going to talk to them about that as well. After seeing the question, I did reach out to our contact at New Trier High School to ask some questions about articulation, and they shared that there is an All About Electives virtual event on Wednesday, January 27th, and I'll throw this into my newsletter this week, so you don't have to scramble for a pen if you don't have one handy. And so families are going to receive information about that via email. And then normally students do a tour the first week of August. They said that is, kind of see where we are in August. So there will be a tour on the part of New Trier, hopefully right before school starts, but they'll be communicating that with you. Again, they don't have any events where New Trier students talk with junior high students, but I think it's a great idea. So we'll see if we can get something like that in the works through our PTO. Mr. Reeses, you're going to begin receiving a lot of communications from him as he starts sending you this information. And then if you missed the academic life night, you can view a recording of it on their webpage, which again is in the newsletter, and I'll make sure to include it again this week. So there will be much more coming in the month, I would say, to 2 months in front of us. And I think that we're going to make some decisions about, I know someone had posted about any kind of end of year activities. Of course, all students will be given the opportunity to participate in whatever that looks like, and more information definitely to come in the next month or two.
Great, thank you, Kate. Panelists, I'm going to skip a question for the moment because there's a related question, and Kelly Jackson, I think this you could best answer this one. Same question, but for our 4th graders. So our 4th graders who are remote right now, is there anything being done differently, or what's that transition going to look like from 4th grade remote to Highcrest?
Sure. And just to add on to Kate as well, with respect to New Trier, there are transition meetings that happen between the teachers, between both schools as well, so that there's information given just about each student on a more anecdotal level. There's also transition cards that go over. So there's a lot of kind of behind the scenes work that's going on currently. The first big step for 8th graders is really that placement decision, which will be coming out shortly. And that's much based on, again, those transition cards that teachers filled out and information that you guys filled out, but then also the placement test that was taken in December through New Trier. So it's an exciting time and there's a lot to keep track of. Same thing for our 4th graders that are rising up to 5th grade. We're currently planning for their orientation. And so this year, certainly we had a different type of orientation, and we really built in a lot of learning about Highcrest into our first few weeks of school. In the coming year, I think there are some lessons that we've learned that were really beneficial to adjusting how we did orientation with our kids, but we also want to try our best to get them into the school, give them a tour, show them around, and really help them to feel at home at Highcrest as they're moving up there. Like New Trier has kind of a big event, Highcrest has kind of that first big event for our 4th graders, and that's picking your language. And so I know Linda Morich, who is our 5th grade level administrator, will be reaching out to our 4th grade families soon with a video and some information about the 5 different languages that we offer. There's also a transition meeting that will be held, and Kristen probably could talk about this, but with Kristen and the Student Services Department, with also Linda Morich attends that as well for parents of students with IEPs, just to talk about general programming and how that might be different at Highcrest. And those transition meetings usually take place, I would say, February and early March. The language decision is really that first kind of big thing. From there, like they do at New Trier, we meet, our administrative team meets, and 4th and 5th grade teachers share transition information. They have meetings all spring long. That's for gen ed teachers, special ed teachers. Everybody really tries to smooth out that transition. And I know we mentioned this before, but we also have articulation conversations between 4th grade teachers and 5th grade teachers, so that our 4th grade teachers are able to share with those 5th grade teachers, hey, we got this far in the curriculum, and these students did this well, and these students did this well, and so on and so forth, so that they really have a good picture of how the students are progressing and what they can be ready for when the 4th graders come in and come to 5th grade. And again, I think it's important to mention also for 5th graders moving to 6th grade, 6th graders moving to 7th grade, and even 7th graders moving to 8th grade, especially those students who have been in our remote programming, they are going to need an introduction to the building. Some of them, our current 5th graders, have never been in Highcrest. And so we want to make sure that they're acquainted. And those are some extra orientation things that we're planning to get them acquainted to the building. And then when we think about the fall, we aren't sure what that's going to look like, but the likelihood of us needing to do some orientation for all of our students that are in the building is pretty high. Even our 6th graders and 5th graders who have been at Highcrest in our hybrid model haven't been to the cafeteria to eat. They haven't been changing classes this year. So there's a lot of things that we are going to have to review and make sure that whatever new safety protocols we might have are in place, and the kids are very well aware of what's going on. So there's a lot of orientation that's going to be needed as we get into the new school year, and our teams are already planning for that transition to hopefully make it as smooth as possible for all of your kids.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to do a quick time check. It's about 7:42, and usually we try to keep our presentations to about 1 hour. So how we're going to address as many questions as we can is we're going to continue with the pre-submitted, and I'll look for questions that are more broader in nature, that are not as narrow in scope, just to maximize getting answers to our families. We'll also ask right now for some live questions, but also our panelists are going to begin to answer the Q&A questions, submitted questions, by typing answers. So for our panelists, because it's likely you have not done this before, you're going to tap on the type answer button and you're going to type your answer. As soon as you submit it, then our entire audience can see the answer. So for panelists, just as we told our people that are coming on live, when they just know specific information, just because it is viewable for everybody. So our parents, please continue to submit those questions into the Q&A, and our panelists will get to those as quick as they can. I think we'll take a moment here if we have anyone that wants to ask a live question. I did get a good chuckle from one of you saying that it was bath time in your house. Otherwise, you'd come on camera to ask your question. So thank you. In the evening doing presentations, it's nice to have a little laugh like that. So much appreciated. Suzanne, I am going to bring you over into the meeting for you to ask your question. Hold on. You'll be moved over as a panelist, and then you can turn on your video and unmute your mic.
Hi. Oh God, I wasn't expecting to go on, but
yep, we can see and hear you, so go ahead.
Okay. I was the one that asked about the kids and comparison of in-person versus remote and keeping up to make sure that my daughter was keeping up. But she's in first grade, so she's not doing the maths. So I am wondering, what would that comparison or what is that evaluation looking like for first graders?
Sure. For first grade, I will begin by saying that the classroom teachers would have those grade level conversations and as they collaborate. So that's one. So the classroom based evidence that is being, supplied by your child. The other is we have Ames Web Plus, which is another benchmarking tool that we could do. We gather information across the district, and we would be able to see if there's any, significant discrepancies. But I believe that the best way for us to monitor first grade and kindergarten would be with their curriculum, the curriculum-based assessments, in-class observations by the teachers. And again, teachers do talk in teams about their students and about student progress in general, and then also across the district. So that's the way we would measure that. I hope I answered your question.
Yep. Thank you, Suzanne. I moved you back over as an attendee. If there's anyone else that would like to ask a live question, go ahead and raise your hand.
Tony, while we're waiting for that, I'll jump in and just add a little bit to what Katie was sharing. I would encourage our parents, if you have concerns about the growth your child is making, our teachers are very aware of the kind of progress both our remote and our in-person learners are making. And so if you are concerned that your child is maybe a little behind or a little bit ahead of their peers, please have a conversation with your teachers about that. They'll be able to kind of gauge where they're at and what might be the next step in their learning progression.
Great, thanks. All right, so as our panelists continue to answer your questions via Q&A, I'll go back to the pre-submitted questions. Katie, just very quickly, we had a parent ask about report cards. I'll broaden that question to ask when is the next report card, as well as is it at the same time as our in-person families? Is it different for remote families?
For every single family, students, learning remotely or in person, the report cards will be viewable on February 5th. So since the first semester ended, the report cards are being prepared right now, and then the system will open it up for you.
Great, thank you, Katie. As I look at our questions, I am going to skip down to here's one. This could really go to anyone on our panel. We have some transitions happening between first semester and second semester, and kids leaving classes. How is the district addressing emotional support as kids change classes?
I can jump in. I can start if you want. So we know that with the choice of changing learning programs from first semester to second semester, some students in some classes will experience, hey, we've got a new buddy in our class, or hey, we lost a buddy in our class. And so since our since our teachers are very aware of that, we've been talking to them, and I know building principals have been encouraging them to really spend the first couple of days within the transition to build that community and continue to foster that community. And I believe all of that is in the works currently. And as far as the emotional support beyond, our teachers are conducting lessons on social emotional learning, and they are working on lessons about, making connections with one another. We are also trying to increase socialization across the different classrooms and among other students. So not just their own class, but they might have a session or time that they can spend with a buddy in a different classroom at the same grade level, or even an older buddy. So we're trying to increase all of these opportunities for students to interact and kind of build their own classroom community, but also extend it out to the school.
Great, thank you, Katie.
I would also add that we have mental health professionals in all of our buildings. We have psychologists and social workers who work very closely with the teachers behind the scenes, but are also available if you have questions or concerns. If you have a child who's really feeling very bereft or is really struggling with something, you can absolutely reach out to your child's classroom teacher or to the psychologist or social worker in the building to help navigate some of these. I mean, this is a change in the middle of the year that is new for our students. But I think that we have lots of supports in place and available to help support them through this.
Great, thank you, Kristen. The next question I have here is about, and Cindy, if you can take this one, is about morning announcements for our remote elementary kids. The parent is stating that currently there aren't any. Could that be done? Are there hurdles to doing morning announcements? Sometimes, and this is just me adding this part, that builds community when you're in person, and when our kids are remote and they don't have that common start to the day. I think that's what that parent's getting at, is can that experience be replicated in a remote scenario in our elementary schools?
Absolutely, and it's something we've been debating all year. Unfortunately, we're not doing announcements in person either. Our arrival in person doesn't allow for daily announcements at the elementary level. So we're trying to reach out to all of our students, and the principals have seesaw pages for their school, so that we're trying to bring together our school community as a whole, in person and remote, and do minimum monthly, sometimes weekly, sometimes more than weekly activities and announcements to kind of build that community. So we've shifted the focus. What daily announcements used to be is, the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, and that's now done in the classrooms by the teachers. And now we're more focusing on how to build a school community and bring together our in-person and remote students. So it's a bit of a shift. But as everything is this year, it's us trying to be creative in new ways.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Kate, I think if you could maybe address this next question. As the weather turns from cold to warmer, certainly not this week, but in future weeks, is it possible to get our remote kids together outdoors so they can see each other in person? Is that something that the school facilitates, or is that something as parents they need to facilitate?
I think that it can be a little tricky just given different comfort levels. And so our remote teachers have comfort levels as well. And I think that our teachers have tried to be really inclusive. And so to meet during the school day to gather could potentially leave some students out who are not comfortable coming to the school So I know that our remote team has definitely tossed this around, and what can it look like? We really started tossing it around as it started to get cold. So I think our hope is that as the weather starts to warm up, the Californian in me is hoping sooner than later, but we'll have to see. That as it starts to warm up, I can foresee some of our remote teachers having that conversation about, hey, who's comfortable going in to facilitate this, and then I'll stay back and work with a group of students remotely. So more to come, and we definitely hear that our remote students would love an opportunity to really safely see each other in person.
Great, thank you, Kate.
Tony, if I can jump in, I just wanted to add too, I think Kate answered that question really well. And I think that as we look towards spring, we're going to be learning a whole lot more. The warmer weather will allow us additional opportunities to explore that, whether it's facilitated by the school or facilitated by families who feel a little more comfortable, socially distanced, of course, gathering outdoors. So those are some things that we'll look at. I did see several questions come up again about coming to in-person instruction. When will remote learning be eliminated from our school programming? Right now, there is still so much for us to learn over the next 6 to 8 weeks about what school will look like in the upcoming school year, what options will be available. So we are committed to maintaining our in-person and fully remote options throughout this school year. We do have a summer school program we'll be offering that will be available in person this summer. So if you're someone who has had your children participating fully remotely this school year, but in the summertime, you are interested in having them experience some of this in-person learning, again, we expect the mitigation procedures will still be in place. We'd encourage you to think about that. Those will be offered in July. They'll be academically based. And then I saw another question about transitioning over to New Trier, and I just want to put a plug in for my colleagues over at New Trier. I know there's lots of worry as you're transitioning your first or your oldest child up to high school, and placement tests and teacher recommendations and what courses and what grades. Please know that when you meet with the advisor and talk through those options, parents and students really have a lot of option in those recommendations. So New Trier will make some recommendations for you for where your 8th grader might be most successful, but parents and students absolutely can level up or level down depending on their comfort level, the area that they are most interested in being challenged, and their commitment to doing homework and those kinds of activities outside of school. And so honestly, some of our fully remote learners may have had some really good experiences this year that might prepare them well for that. So please know that you have lots of options, and you absolutely have the ability to advocate for your child if you'd like to see them in a more advanced class or a less advanced class as they transition to New Trier. They're just wonderful about that. So
Carrie, I just echoed that, and I just answered one in the Q&A as well. And parents always have the last say with that. So I think that's important to remember. You know your child best, so they offer that to you.
Great. It's interesting to see how there's a lot of common questions that our parents have. And I think all of us would encourage you to reach out to the parents of other remote students and just kind of build your network and talk with one another. You're all thinking and feeling the same way from what we see on our side. So if there's anyone that would like to ask we'll do another check, a live question, please raise your hand in Zoom. And we'll move you over to ask that question. As we're waiting, we do have someone, so I'll bring them over. Our panelists are continuing to type answers to your questions in the Q&A, so please continue to submit those. And if we have time, we'll go back to the pre-submitted ones. So I'm going to move someone over here. And the person that I moved over, please go ahead and turn on your video and unmute your mic. I think it's Mule. While we're waiting, I'll leave you as a panelist just in case you were able to ask your question live. I did see a couple of pre-submitted questions more about transitions, and there was an interesting one I think we've already addressed the transition question, but just to bring to your attention, it was someone asking about transitioning from 5th grade to 6th grade. So a transition that we would not normally have planned on, but because we may have some 5th graders that have never stepped foot into Highcrest, let's say. And maybe Kelly, you could just kind of reassure our parents here, will there be some kind of transition planning for those non-traditional transition grades?
Absolutely. And I think I mentioned that will be true for 5th to 6th grade, as well as 7th to 8th grade. I was just talking with our assistant principals today about this. So we will have different opportunities for them to get into the building, along with everybody else, learning some new routines and getting used to being in school all together, hopefully this fall. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. If we have anyone else that would like to ask a live question, go ahead and raise your hand in Zoom. Okay. If not, let me go back to our pre-submitted questions. So here's a question, maybe Cindy, you can answer this one. Will classes remain together with current teachers? Are classes changing for our remote kids heading into second semester?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know we were all worried that we might have to make some changes, but the great news is we did not have to. So all of the students who chose the same program, so any remote students who chose to stay in the remote program for the second semester will be in the same class with the same teacher and the same peers that stayed in the program as well. So that was really good news. And we were all really relieved that that was the case and that we didn't have to change any placement.
Great, thank you, Cindy. I think what I want to do is ask our panelists here, as you've been answering questions similar to how Carrie did, is there anything you wanted to pull out for the larger group that maybe some common themes, something that you just kind of want to state, even though you may have answered it just really, really briefly for everybody on the webinar tonight?
I'm happy to start. I think transition is on everybody's minds right now. And I can't reiterate enough that we are well aware of the need to support our kids, both academically and social emotionally, as they transition to the next grade level. And so we are actively planning ways for them to make that transition. And if you have concerns along the way, please always reach out to any of us, to your classroom teachers for this year, to our assistant principals as well, are here to help. So that's our job. And we want happy kids as they move from grade to grade, and happy parents too. So we'll do everything in our power to make sure that that goes smoothly.
Great, thank you. Kelly, is there anyone else that wanted to just kind of pull out something and just highlight it for our parents tonight? And if not, that's fine. The answers are in the Q&A.
I saw a question that was submitted earlier about parent-teacher conferences, and wondering if there is some additional opportunities for that, or maybe just what a parent might do if they're looking to connect with a teacher in something like a parent-teacher conference, even if we're not hosting a district-wide one. Kelly or Kate, it seemed like this was more about 5-8, but maybe Cindy, you can talk a little bit about what parent-teacher conferences look like for you too.
At elementary, they do have spring parent-teacher conferences scheduled. At 5-8, we haven't scheduled those into our calendar for this year. It's a professional development day on that Friday, so the students don't have school, but kids go to school on that Thursday while the elementary schoolers are doing conferences. Regardless of conference days or not, teacher or parents are always welcome to reach out to their classroom teachers if they have a question about their child's progress or how they're learning. Our teachers are more than willing to meet with you or have a phone call with you. And as we or our assistant principals, the grade level administrators at the middle school and junior high, have a lot of conferences every day. So I know that they are actively doing that. But please reach out to us, or your teachers, reach out to your teachers first, because they'll know your child best, and they'll be happy to meet with you at any time.
Great, thank you, Kelly. Carrie, I'm just going to do a quick time check. It is 8:02. We can just let me know if we're able to maybe do one more question, or if at this point we're wrapping up. Normally we try to keep these parent events to about an hour.
Yeah, I think I'm looking through and it looks like we answered most of the questions. Does anyone see another question that needs to be addressed? And those who are visiting with us today, who are attending as participants in the webinar, if somehow we missed your question, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to answer it. Maybe we looked past it and certainly didn't intend to. So Tony, is there one or two more questions that you think we maybe haven't yet addressed? And then I think we'll need to close up for the night.
Yeah, I think let me, I see a couple of questions about state assessments. So Katie, if you wouldn't mind, whether it's our local assessment like MAP testing, I think we talked a little bit about that, or what we haven't talked about, I think are state assessments. How does that look like? What does that look like for a remote student?
Tony, I was looking at the same line. That's so interesting. So for the remote only students, we do offer an in-person option for that, and that was offered earlier the past week for you to sign up your child to do an in-person. However, remotely or in person, MAP testing starts January 20th and the window extends to February 4th. As far as specific information as to when, or the specific date or the time and whether it'll be reading first or math first, that would be best addressed to the teacher. And I'm sure they've already communicated that with you. Maybe this question was submitted prior to getting that communication. So that's one. The specific question about the state test was for fourth graders. So I'll answer that, but then offer a resource for you to find out about all of the assessments that we provide in District 39. So we have right now no indication that it's been canceled. The state mandated test so far, we've been monitoring it every week. The Illinois Assessment of Readiness, often referred to as IAR, is given to fourth graders. And also there's a physical fitness assessment that is given in PE class that would be also given. If we hear anything as far as any state mandated tests being canceled, we would announce that and let everybody know. But if you're curious for a full list, you can find it in our district website. If you go under academics and then curriculum instruction, there's also a subpage called assessments, and it'll outline for you all of the assessments that we do specific to District 39 and then any state assessments that we follow.
Great, thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
I think, Carrie, at this point, it is 8:05, and in looking at the pre-submitted questions, we covered most topics. There's a couple of very specific ones, so I would encourage those parents to reach out to the administrator or principal to get those answered. And I think you looked over the Q&A, and I believe I've seen that most have been answered. Oh, even the last one was just answered, I believe, by Kate. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it back over to you to go ahead and wrap up.
Thank you. And again, so many thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. Again, I know it's been a long day, and so we really appreciate your taking the time out of your day to join us this evening, to submit your questions in advance, as well as to engage with us through the Q&A. And for those brave people who jumped on video, we really appreciate that as well. So we hope it was an informative evening. If you have follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And to learn more about your own students' progress, please, I know our teachers would love to connect with you. And so if you have specific questions there, please don't hesitate to reach out to your teacher about that. Look for additional information in the coming months regarding registration for next school year, as well as summer school that likely will be coming out around spring break. So you've got some time to think about that, but we really do encourage everyone to think about summer school and the other opportunities that might exist. So thank you again so much for joining us this evening. Have a wonderful night. Panelists, thanks for giving of your time tonight. Take care.
Bye. Good night.